to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Princeton, where in an open and welcoming community we live our message of hope, love, justice, and joy. We extend a special welcome to our visitors. We're very happy that you've joined us this morning, and we'd love to get to know more about you after the service. If you haven't already, please stop by the newcomer table in Robinson Lounge so that we can sign you up for all of our e-lists and let you know about the many different events that we have happening here at UU Princeton. Again, welcome everyone. It's great to be together on this beautiful morning. We have quite a few announcements. There's a lot happening at UU Princeton these days. The first is that right after the service, all are invited to join our evergreen chapter of the Covenant of Unitarian Universalist Pagans for the Burning the Greens ritual. That'll be right out front of those doors. These are the greens with which we adorn Channing Hall for our Hanging of the Greens service in December. We'll burn them today, and then we'll use the trunk of that tree for our maypole dance in May. We use that tree all year long. That's right after the service, and you can kind of drop into it for that ritual. Also, after the service, our Earth Ministry will be holding an organizational meeting in the John Wary Room. The Earth Ministry gives us the chance to work with like-minded Unitarian Universalists toward the goal of creating opportunities for people to act locally while thinking globally. Today's meeting is to plan activities for celebrating Earth Day in April. And by the way, to help encourage you to stay for the meeting, there will be snacks, healthy snacks at the Earth Ministry meeting. We also invite you to join Princeton Eats Plants for their monthly potluck this Wednesday, February 5th at 6 p.m. in Founders Room. You can bring your favorite plant-based dish and enjoy community and conversation with other plant-curious folks. The theme this month in honor of Valentine's Day is date night dishes. Any questions can be emailed to pep@uuprinceton.org. We also hope that you'll join us after the service next Sunday, February 9th, for our special Super Bowl brunch. That's SOUPER Bowl brunch. You're invited to bring your favorite soup, stew, or chili to share. If soup is not your specialty, you can also bring salad, desserts, beverages, or your favorite Super Bowl munchies. This will be a fun way to celebrate the other Super Bowl while raising funds for our children and youth programs. You can sign up on our website and check your email for new information. And we also hope that you will mark Sunday, March 9th off on your calendar, for we'll have a book discussion. We'll start a book discussion of this book, Mindful Race Talk, written by Dr. Natalie Edmond. Dr. Edmond is a Unitarian Universalist, a member of the Washington Crossing congregation, and she'll be here to kick off this discussion. You can purchase this book in Robinson Lounge after the service today, and that gives you a full month to read it before we start talking about it together. And with one more announcement, I'm pleased to welcome Aparna Zama up to the pulpit to talk about the auction.
Good morning. I'm here to announce the fellowship auction is back strong. We'll start bidding on February 21st, and there's going to be an in-person event right here in Channing in the evening at 5 o'clock. Don't miss it. So I know that there are a lot of newcomers here, so I want to share a little bit about what the auction is about. It's really a major fundraiser for UU Princeton. The funds go directly to all the ministries initiatives that we have going on here. And usually when they ask me to give a testimonial about the auction and what it means personally to me, I say it's a great community building process, and it's great to gather in small groups, doing activities together, having a meal together, really laughing, connecting, bonding together, and really reveling in each other's company. But I wasn't feeling it this year. I wasn't feeling it. This last month has been awful. Has it been awful for you? Especially as an immigrant, as a mom, as a naturalized citizen, as an educator, as a reproductive biologist, and someone in higher ed that works with students every day and trying to bring equity to underrepresented minority students, it has been feeling like I've been tasered 5 times every hour. So I've been down. I didn't want to socialize. Poor Candace Hedberg has been reaching out to me, saying, what are you going to do for the auction? I was like, no. And I didn't even know what I was going to say an hour ago while I was standing near our backyard, looking out into the yard, and I saw some squirrels running around. And I remembered something. I was raised a Hindu, and there's a story. It's called the Ramayana. It's an epic. It's really a love story between Prince Rama and Princess Sita. Theirs is an everlasting love. And for one reason or the other, they are exiled to the forest. And in the forest, Sita, his beloved, is kidnapped by a demon king called Ravana. He hides her away on an island where there are no bridges. And Rama has to get to her, but he has nothing except the love in his heart. So he assembles a ragtag army of humans, monkeys, bears, eagles, and a whole bunch of other critters that march with him. And they get to the sea, there is no bridge. So each one of them picks up a pebble, a rock, a boulder, throws it into the sea. By some magical process, they all float and they stick together and form a bridge. And so this story is somewhat rooted in history of some type, I don't know. But what made me think about it is that even a tiny squirrel or a bird would bring a pebble, throw it in, and it would stick together and form a bridge. And then this ragtag army of love marches across that bridge and rescues Sita, Rama's beloved. So that's how that story ends. But I was thinking about how many bridges and relationships are being broken right now. And where can we find that ragtag army of love? Right here at UU Princeton. Because we are a people of hope, we are a people of love, but where do we find each other? That's where I come to the silent auction, or now called the fellowship auction. So come fill your social calendar for the year. Come have a meal, do an activity, go on a trip with your friends, learn about each other, love each other. Let's renew ourselves for the new year, for the new work that we are about to do. So don't forget, start bidding February 22nd, 21st, and come here on March 1st. Thank you.
I think Ragtag Army of Love should just be top of our website right now. Great. And now, grateful for each and welcoming all, let us be together for this hour of peace and balance in a space of community and acceptance, for a sacred hour in which we can remember the good, seek the true, and look together toward the love that holds all. Come, let us worship together.
Waking up this morning, I smile. 24 brand new hours are before me. I vow to live fully in each moment and to look at all beings with the eyes of compassion. Smiling is very important. If we are not able to smile, then the world will not have peace. It's not by going out for a demonstration against nuclear missiles that we can bring about peace. It's with our capacity of smiling, breathing, and being peace that we can make peace. If we cannot smile, we can't help other people to smile. If we are not peaceful, then we cannot contribute to the peace movement. Peace work, first of all, means being peace.
We are pleased now to celebrate some of the newest members of UU Princeton. Here to help us with that are some of the members of our welcome team.
Good morning. I'm very pleased to introduce a new member, Regine Clement. She's a native New Yorker and former Army brat. She was introduced to UU. Oh, she was introduced, can you hear me now? She was introduced to UU by a friend and feels lucky for it. She's a nonprofit development professional and has lived in New Jersey for 3 years. Regine has been attending UUCP since May 2023 and is grateful for the warm welcome she's received, particularly from the wonderful Linda Benson.
Good morning. Judy Fisher has been attending UU Princeton since December of last year. That means she's became a member just after her first anniversary. She and her husband have raised 2 sons who have grown into lovely young men. She is a licensed clinical social worker in private practice in Princeton Junction. She relocated from Highland Park to Princeton Junction just 2 years ago and views UU Princeton as a beautiful little island. Unfortunately, right now it's surrounded by turbulent waters, but UU will continue to be a bright light in the midst of it all.
So I'm very, very pleased to introduce Mary Beth Tran. Hi. So Mary Beth was born and raised in New Jersey and has lived in Lawrence for the past 10 years with her husband, Eric. She is so happy to have found a spiritual home at UU Princeton and says that if you told her that a community like UU Princeton existed, one where all faiths, agnostics, and atheists gathered together, welcoming, respecting, and honoring each other, and working together to help those outside of these walls without any other motive than recognizing their need, she would not have believed it until she walked into UU Princeton for the first time. She says a place like this is so rare and special, and it only exists because of the generations that came before us and the people who are here now. I am excited to be part of the people who are here now to make it possible for the generations to come. Welcome, Mary Beth.
I'd like to welcome Belinda Seeger. Did I pronounce it right, Seeger? Okay. Belinda describes herself as a lifelong Unitarian Universalist, even before she aligned with the faith 2 years ago. She grew up in a secular Jewish family, but found herself seeking a deeper spiritual connection at a young age. And she's still at a young age. This path led her to a lifelong meditation practice and a focus of service, community, and compassion. Belinda is mom to 2 young adults and a furry family member. We won't ask. She lives in Princeton with her husband, Scott, where they are both psychotherapists.
And now let us all join in the welcoming with the litany of welcoming that's printed in your order of service. Yours are the words in italics. Blessed are those who yearn for deepening more than escape, who are not afraid to grow in spirit.
Blessed are those who take their bond of community, who regularly join in celebration and learn.
Blessed are those who bring their children, who invite their friends to come along to join in fellowship, service, learning, and growth. Blessed are those who, when asked to serve, do it gladly, who realize that change is brought about through human meeting, who do the work of committees and who stay till the end. Blessed are they indeed. Let's welcome some of our new members. And as everyone takes their seat, we'll sing the hymn 360, Here We Have Gathered. But after service, as is our custom, we also have cake to celebrate our newest members. So you can have some cake and then go to the Earth Ministry meeting and have healthy snacks. We like to balance everything out here at UU Princeton.
Dear friends, I'm happy to share with you for today's meditation a Vietnamese poem by Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, translated to English. The poem is called Tin Vui, or The Good News. The good news. They don't publish it or discuss it in their newspapers, but in ours, every day, we still cover the good news. Every early morning, we publish a special issue, and we really need you to read it. Read it to know what is truly going on. The good news is you are still alive, and the magnolia tree standing out front has blossomed. That magnolia tree, have you noticed, has stood firm, braving all of winter's bitter cold and ice. The good news is your eyes are still bright, in good condition, and you still have time to behold the blue sky. A beautiful young child is standing in front of you, eyes twinkling. You can open your arms wide and embrace the little one close to your heart. They only cover shocking news. They only cover sorrowful, negative news. Try and pick up our newspaper and have a read. Each issue is full of wholesome news, good news, positive news, because we want you to always benefit from and help protect the happiness shared by all. The dandelion blooming there by the sidewalk, she's smiling a wondrous smile and singing the song of the ultimate, the divine eternal song. With your ears and full attention, you can hear it too, I'm sure. Let us join our palms and bow our heads to listen to that singing voice. Let us leave behind the world of sorrow and anxiety. Let us rise above as a free person. The latest good news has just come. That is, you have the Buddha nature inside. Happiness, stability, and freedom are what you and I can all bring forth. For the first 25 years of my life, I grew up in the evangelical Christian church and was a devout, born-again Christian. I had heard of Thich Nhat Hanh, a famous Vietnamese Buddhist monk, but didn't encounter his teachings until my Amazon algorithm suggested one of his books to me a few years ago. By this point, I had drifted away from the faith I had grown up in and had been exploring spirituality outside of formal religion. The book recommended to me was No Mud, No Lotus, The Art of Transforming Suffering. I was going through a tough time, so the suffering part resonated with me, check. And desperately wanting to transform it, double check. Needless to say, the book was in my cart, checked out, and sent to my Kindle fast. Upon reading this book, I learned about the practice of embracing our suffering. Thich Nhat Hanh described embracing suffering, our pain, our fear, anger, depression, and sadness, as if it were your crying baby, holding it with tenderness and caring for it. This was different for me because my very human reaction to suffering is to fight it, to try and change it, and then if I can't, ignore it and suppress it. This teaching has made meditation practice so much more helpful to me because a lot of the times I couldn't get myself to be peaceful and Zen like those perfectly still Buddha statues, and so I didn't think it worked for me. But mindful breathing and meditation has now become a space for me to recognize and embrace all the difficulties and pain that is part of being human. Only by first recognizing and embracing it can it then be transformed. At the same time, suffering is not enough, Thich Nhat Hanh said. Life is filled with suffering, but it is also filled with many wonders. So just as through his teachings, I'm learning to touch deeply and heal the difficulties in my life, I'm also practicing how to touch the wonders of the present moment. Through practicing mindfulness, I can see what is really going on. And when those flashes of realization come, there's a deep joy and wonder that comes gushing forth in my spirit and nourishes and soothes the aches and hurts that I might be dealing with at the same time. One recent instance, I was sick in bed, physically dealing with the pain and discomfort of a bad sinus infection and emotionally recovering from a family interaction that dusted up a lot of difficult memories and hurts. While I wish I could tell you I perfectly applied all the practices I just mentioned and had a smile on my face and was peaceful like the Buddha, my dear husband is here and witnessed the whole thing, so I have to be honest and say I was not. Well, I used the practice enough to know that what I was going through was a hard time. I slipped into old habits and reached for those handy screens that are so quick to put me in a trance to forget all that is going on and all that I'm feeling. One evening, my husband came in randomly and sat closely by my side. I turned my head and quickly closed my screen as a flash of realization came. I said out loud a mantra I learned from Thich Nhat Hanh for embracing your beloved one and touching the wonder that they are. Darling, I know you are there, and I'm so happy. And we both smiled. So I leave you with a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh's book, Being Peace. Meditation is to be aware of what is going on in our bodies, in our feelings, in our minds, and in the world. The superpowers now have more than 50,000 nuclear warheads, enough to destroy our planet many times. Yet the sunrise is beautiful, and the rose that bloomed this morning along the wall is a miracle. Life is both dreadful and wonderful. To practice meditation is to be in touch with both aspects. Please do not think that we must be solemn in order to meditate. In fact, to meditate well, we have to smile a lot.
Our first reading is a poem titled Perfect Sense by Kathleen Housley. She writes, "There came a child once who sang God's peace, a potent all is well, though nothing was, piped in a small voice in the middle of a dark night with no promise of dawn. Too young to read, she sang songs by heart, mixing up tunes and words, adding nonsense sounds as gleeful as odes to joy, with grace notes that made dirges pirouette, such as her muddle about the meaning of balm, thinking it an explosive that turned into medicine to make the wounded whole, which made perfect sense, surpassing the wisdom of those who could read and knew better, except there was nothing better than balm becoming balm, and soldier becoming healer, in the song of a child whose every word meant peace." And our second reading is Singing Everything by Joy Harjo. Once there were songs for everything, songs for planting, for growing, for harvesting, for eating, getting drunk, falling asleep, for sunrise, birth, mind break, and more, for death. Those are the heaviest songs, and they have to be pried from the earth with shovels of grief. Now all we hear are falling in love songs and falling apart after falling in love songs. The earth is leaning sideways, and a song is emerging from the floods and fires. Urgent tendrils lift toward the sun. You must be friends with silence to hear. The songs of the guardians of silence are the most powerful and the most rare. And then the sermon. There's a story of the Buddha instructing an impatient and anxious student. They were traveling a long distance over several days and came to that night's resting place. And the Buddha had spent the day hearing the student wonder aloud, kind of complaining, whining really about wanting to get where they were going. Those who've taken a family vacation can hear the "are we there yet?" ringing through the ages, making that question commonly lobbed from the backseat today at least 3,000 years old. Reconnecting with this story now, I've decided that my answer to that question from now on will be, it's going to take 3,000 years to get where we're going, probably longer. But back to the Buddha. Once they arrived, the Buddha asked the student to go get some water from a lake all the way across that field. This may have been a legitimate need for water, or it may have been just because he wanted a few moments of peace. I can identify with that too. Maybe a bit of both, but regardless, the student was sent away on his task. However, when the student arrived at the lake, an ox cart was being pushed through the water, making it very muddy. The student went back to the Buddha and said that the water there was too dirty to drink and they'd have to figure something out. The Buddha asked him to go back and fill a bucket with water anyway, which he did. The student brought the full bucket back and set it down, and the Buddha just waited. The impatient student asked him if he was ever going to drink the water, and the Buddha said yes, but only when it settled, for it wouldn't be muddy then. The student didn't understand, but after a few minutes, the Buddha took a cup and filled it from the top of the bucket and had a delicious drink of clean water, as did the student, as did the others who were traveling with them. There was still mud and silt at the bottom, but they just didn't drink that part. They waited in peace and found what they needed once everything had settled. The poet Joy Harjo wrote that you have to be friends with the silence to hear the songs emerging from floods and fires. She's saying that you have to settle in and create a kind of peace to hear the new, beautiful noise that is, quote, lifting toward the sun. This is like the Buddha who instructed here and elsewhere that peace among people, peace in villages and schools and homes, this relational peace all begins with the self. And not just the Buddha. A famous quotation attributed to Lao Tse, who is believed to have founded Taoism, professes this same faith. That reading begins with, if there is to be peace in the world, and ends with, there must be peace in the heart. And it continually scales down the size of that relational peace to be created until the peace that one can create is on their own, is within their own selves. From that seed grows the peace that binds, strengthens, and uplifts others. That seed forms the center of the kind of spiritual activism that tempers the ego, anger, and impatience. For one engaged in that inner work of being an activist for peace within themselves is vividly aware of how unpeaceful they are at any given moment. Moments of peace may be more rare than moments of discord. Like driving in a traffic jam. Maybe for a moment or two when there's a good song on the radio or I'm listening to a good podcast, things are great. But mostly if I'm stuck in traffic, I'm just annoyed to be stuck in traffic. I want to get where I'm going and to do what I'm supposed to be doing. And thus there is no peace in the present moment because I want the moment to be different than it is. And so I stir the already muddy water, making it even more unpleasant, and start blaming everyone else for that discord, which just makes everything worse. What I control in that moment is me. What I can cultivate is a sense of peace within. The work that I can really do is all inner. And then perhaps attending to that, at the very least, I don't make things worse for everyone else. The car next to me doesn't see my exasperation and on some level join on. I don't inch ever closer to the car in front of me, making them uneasy. I'm not the sort to lay on the horn anyway, but others in New Jersey definitely are. And when everyone is stuck, that never helps. No one is waiting for a horn to tell them to go somewhere when there's nowhere to go. The horn itself just makes things worse for everyone. We all need to practice inner peace in traffic and everywhere, if for no other reason than to not make a world that is already often unpeaceful even more unpeaceful. But there is a sense, too, that the benefit of practicing peace within is not just a negative blessing, that it will add less ire to the world. It's also a positive one. It will add more goodness to the world. For we see in the model of someone maintaining a kind of peaceful centeredness, a way of living that we too can attain, even if in fits and starts. We see that we too can, in stillness and self-awareness, not just cultivate within what blesses us, but share with others what can bless them. The inner activism then becomes outer activism, which gets at the intersection between spiritual practices and social justice. They share a lot in common, but the spiritual activist is always working on their self. They're always growing within, maintaining a discipline that calls them to account for living lives that don't always reflect their ideals. The social activist who lacks a sense of the inner life calls others to account for living lives that don't reflect ideals that they might not even share to begin with. It's hard to find commonality because the exchanges are full of rancor and posturing, because neither digs deep within. Each is too assured of how right they are and how wrong the other is. And in today's marketplace of ideas, why challenge ourselves with depth and growth when algorithms await to shallow us with profitable uniformity? The spiritual activist digs deep within because it's how they grow, it's how they serve, and how they change the world in alignment with values that they believe in so much that they not only encourage others to practice, but they practice them themselves, even when no one is looking. Others sense that, even when we don't see it, and it lends authority and trust to the words of the spiritual activist. This is why so many of us appreciate the wisdom of spiritual leaders from traditions, eras, and backgrounds with which we have absolutely nothing in common. There was or is a thread of authenticity in how they lived and what they taught that we find inspiring and centering. Balance is the key. Changing the world is part of one's spiritual life, and cultivating inner discipline is part of changing the world. The Buddha and Lao Tzu believe that it starts within and moves beyond, from inner to outer, from the spiritual to the social, from the script to the stage. I say probably, but the two inform each other continually, so that the social quickly becomes part of the spiritual, and vice versa. For the two worlds are really only distinct in extremes. In the ascetic seeker who completely removes themselves from the impure world, or the rabid activist who confuses volume with wisdom. Most of us live blended lives, centered in conscience and challenged by community in good ways, in ways that texture our togetherness with diverse experiences and new ways of thinking, in ways that shine new lights on our convictions so that we see their flaws and beauty in always evolving ways, in ways that challenge the old stories that we tell too often, in ways that add depth to the old stories we've stopped telling. It may start with inner peace, but that inner peace is quickly affected by life in the relational world, and then the inner is changed just as it changes beyond. And the goal is never perfection. It's to move toward this balance of inner and outer so that we have more wisdom and integrity within, and so that we are seeding and sharing the values that we declare beyond ourselves. It's living in never perfect but more mindful alignment with our values, and knowing that has an impact on the world. It's practicing peace within to build peace among and beyond, even when, especially when, the times feel very, very unpeaceful. The United Nations International School estimated that in 3,400 years of recorded history, only 268 of them have been peaceful around the globe, and that in a particular year, only 10 countries on Earth were not involved in some conflict within their borders or somewhere else. That was in 2016, but the 9 years since then have not exactly been banner years for global peace. And so peace is not going to start out there. It's going to start in here, and then it can spread. The great Thich Nhat Hanh, who Mary Beth introduced us to, puts this finding peace in turbulent times in perspective when he wrote in the book, Being Peace. Many of us worry about the situation of the world. We don't know when the bombs will explode. We feel that we are on the edge of time. As individuals, we feel helpless, despairing. The situation is so dangerous, injustice is so widespread, the danger is so close. In this kind of situation, if we panic, things will only become worse. We need to remain calm to see clearly. And he continues, I like to use the example of a small boat crossing the Gulf of Siam. In Vietnam, there are many people called boat people who leave the country in small boats. Often the boats are caught in rough seas or storms. The people may panic. The boats can sink. But if one person aboard can remain calm, lucid, knowing what to do and what not to do, they can help the boat survive. Their expression, face, voice communicates clarity and calmness, and people have trust in that person. They will listen to what they say. One such person can save the lives of many. He wrote that in 1987, based heavily on his earlier political exile from his home in the country of Vietnam. He died just in 2022, but throughout his life, he maintained the belief and teaching that practicing peace in stormy waters is the most powerful tool that we have. We can't control the waters. We can't control the storms. Just as he could not control global politics and could not control the Vietnam War. Those storms were much bigger than him, but he could control how he moved through them. And by doing so with an authentic inner and outer commitment to peace, he could influence others. He influenced King. He influenced Merton. He continues to influence today, for the times are stormy and scary and the water turbulent. He wrote then that we felt like we were on the edge of time. Growing up in the 80s, that was very much the case when he wrote that. The movies Testament and The Day After imagined a global nuclear war in which only a few survive. Red Dawn had a similar end-time feel too, though it wasn't about global nuclear destruction. And thank goodness Matthew Broderick and Ali Sheedy saved us in War Games, which came out right at the same time, although we were really threatened and then saved from a nuclear holocaust by a computer who liked to play chess in that one. These days, the threats are to democracy and the social good, equality, freedom, diplomacy, a general sense of the modern, liberal, pluralistic order. These days in particular are overwhelming and are absolutely intended for that effect. Though the struggles against that which ought not to be will take years and decades in the doing, we are intended to feel overcome and overwhelmed right now. We are intended to despair and feel that all is lost. And we are intended to rage publicly and whenever possible, even if to little or no effect, for that fuels the prophet. And the struggle is to be engaged, and the activism created new and ever-widening circles, but so too is the inner life of peace and compassion to be cultivated in even greater measure. So too must we meditate and pray and center and be quiet, so that the silt and mud which swirls around us is that which we will not drink, so that we can refreshen ourselves not with filth, but with fresh water that helps our bodies and minds move freely. We must not be controlled by and give our peace and joy to today's manufactured and profitable storms. We must give those storms our attention and our collective commitment and our efforts to dismantle the fear and misery, their effects that they're causing. That is a long journey. The storm is a big one and has in some form been a storm for just about all of human history. But so too have there always been the ones who, in the midst of the storm, then and now been lucid, centered, thoughtful, and sure. Those of yesterday who can influence us today. Those who offered the gifts that we can offer now. The center of who we are, the well from which we draw our activism, must remain that same sacred and holy one that the great teachers have always taught us to cultivate. The well deep within and always flowing of peace, of hope, of compassion, of generosity. When we don't draw from that well, we end up losing ourselves. The good news is that we all do that, or most of us anyway. I don't know, I certainly have not and will not always respond to every storm of today in ways that reflect a deep and wise spirit. I use language inappropriate for this blessed pulpit. But sometimes you just have to get that out, mutter something or shout, break a plate, write something, probably don't post it. But then we can always return to that center, that nudge to the good, that little light that always shines, but shines even brighter when we feed it. Every storm can bring us back to who we really are, which is holy, and who everyone else is, which is holy too. And from that, with that assurance, we can center ourselves and embody the values we really wish to be more present in the world. And we don't have to get it right every time to get it right the next time. And the other good news is that there are ways other than prayer and meditation to help us recenter. Might be writing or reading or making art, might be walking or running, might be cooking or woodworking or crocheting, watching a concert or a basketball game or having dinner with a friend. We all have our ways, and they need not be everyone's ways. But when the storms are the most threatening and the fear is surging and some unknown ending seems near, as it often does, as is the case for many today, that is exactly when we must center in and remember who we are. That is when we must find and claim our peace, our love, our joy, our rest, and our hope. That is when we must drink that cool, clear water, even if just to remind ourselves that we need not ingest the anger and ignorance being cupped for us by others. The Buddha drank clean water. So too must we, for that is what will strengthen our souls to face today's storms with strength and clarity and vision. And that is what will show others as well, a way of being a small boat in a big storm that still has a healthy, holy, and lasting impact on all the other small boats, making it through as best they can. May we weather these storms with one another, practicing peace and building a better tomorrow. May it be so, and amen. And here at the end of our hour, we extinguish our chalice knowing that His light carries us until we gather again. Go forth grateful for the moments before you, the breath within you, the people among you, and the Spirit leading you toward lives of love and kindness. And go forth knowing that you are held always and always with everyone else by that great love of no beginning and never ending. Go in peace, and amen.